used to pull me around in a boat behind his boat. He didn't want me to fish with him because I messed everything up. So he pulled me around in his boat, and I had an old Victrola motor trolling reel and pulled, two baits around and caught walleye.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Hook One Pod. Hey, we're here at Hook One Bait and Tackle in the studio. As always, I'm Pete.
And I'm Louie.
And apparently I can't talk today because I'm pretty excited with what we got coming up. We've got Mr. John Latham with us. What's up, John?
Nothing much. Just you guys.
That's it, man. So for all you locals that are watching this, you know exactly who we're talking to. For all you guys that are out of the area, you're going to find out real quick who we're talking to. Sorry for pumping your head up, John.
Yeah, it's all right.
John's been a great guy, man. He's been with us since day one here at the bait shop. He's actually been with me since day one. I've been buying his baits. John custom paints some Rapalas, as you can see on your screen right now. He does an awesome job painting them, but we have a lot to talk about.
I hope. Yep, we'll teach him something.
That's it, man. So we're really going to try and focus on a subject we've been talking about for a while. You might see these little short stubby rods right here behind me. We've been wanting to talk about whipping for a long time. If we're going to talk to anybody about whipping, or you're going to take advice from anybody about whipping, I highly suggest you tune into this episode, grab a pad of notes, and listen to what this guy's got to say. It should be a lot of fun. But John, why don't we talk a little bit about who you are? You've been in the area a long time. You've been fishing this river a long time. Let's let these guys get to know you a little bit.
I guess I would say that I started when I was literally an infant, and my grandfather started me out hand lining in the Detroit River first.
Yep.
He used to pull me around in a boat behind his boat. He didn't want me to fish with him because I messed everything up. So he pulled me around in his boat, and I had an old Victrola motor trolling reel and pulled, two baits around and caught walleye. And what was cool about it was the little boat he was pulling me in didn't have a motor, so I couldn't control it. And when he turned, the boat would whip, and on the whip, there was the fish every time. So I'd get the fish, and it was just a riot to learn that way. I was grateful as I look back at my life. Naturally, I'm grateful that I had a grandfather who was conscious enough to do that for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And help me to get going. That knowledge that I gained hand lining and then starting to hand line in the St. Clair River all translates and comes forward into whip fishing.
Yep.
All of it. So then I started whip fishing when I was 16. And we'll talk a whole lot about that. And just to bring you up to where I'm at, started painting when I met a guy that I used to run Lake Semco with years and years ago, a guy from this area who's now passed. But he had like a little competition going of who makes the coolest ice jig. So you'd be 1 week, you'd be over on the hole and killing them. And what are you fishing with now is what it boiled down to.
No
and it was
way.
a competition that really got me into painting, and doing the homework.
It started with ice jigs?
Ice jigs.
I actually did not.
By hand.
As many conversations we've had in the garage, I honestly have never known. That's hilarious.
I still probably have 20,000 ice jigs in the garage to paint. So, plus Louie's.
Louie's been in that garage before. He knows the type of magic that comes out of it. I mean, if you name it, and obviously we've already shown you some of the patterns. There's going to be some more scrolling across the screen throughout the episode, but bombers, Rapalas, spoons, walleye hand lining spoons. I mean, you name it, you've probably painted it.
I've painted a lot of stuff.
What's been one of the weirdest, oddest paint jobs that you've had to do? Has it been a pattern or a bait? What was it?
I would say the bass industry has some pretty weird baits.
That's you, buddy.
Shots fired.
That's you, buddy.
Not shots fired, but they, I just did a chartreuse and pink rat, rat swim bait. So that was pretty odd to do. I mean, like I had never seen one before, and I've heard that guys fish with mice and rats. I grew up fishing on Lake Orion,
right?
With, Shakespeare mice.
Yeah, exactly.
You cast them out, they plop on the water. The bass comes up and smacks it. It's great, But yeah, I've painted some pretty weird stuff. Things too that, we live in a small world, and you get out, go down to Florida. You went for your first couple times, and found out they're fishing with some different stuff.
It's nuts.
So you get different areas of the world and you find out they use different things.
That was kind of like the interesting thing when you opened up your garage at first, and we talk about it on the podcast all the time, is all the different ways that guys fish. And that's why I'm super, super stoked to touch on this whipping subject. But before I want to get into the whipping subject, and before we get into that, you've been on this river a long time, man, and that's a credit. You've caught a lot of fish on this river. How much have things changed, as well as how much stuff has really stayed the same?
I would say that as far as like traveling up and down the river, and sure, a home changes on shore, but the shorelines have basically stayed the same,
right,
until you get around the channels.
So the freighter drives up on the sandbar.
Well, like I said, till you get around the channels where there's not so many solid seawalls.
Right.
You know what I mean? And things move. I had a occasion 40 years ago. I was in one of the channels and was fishing with my father-in-law at the time. I was on the bow of the boat. He was on the stern. We were jigging. And I would come in and out of the docks, back and forth in and out of the docks. Well, for some reason, there was a washout on the one corner of one of these docks. And I brought the bow straight up into that washout and would get a fish every time I got up into that, every single time. So you got to pay attention to what's going on with this structure.
Fish are funny, man. We were actually talking about it, and we were kind of setting this up, and we'll explain to them. But fish can be funny, man. If they can find a little bit of slack current, forward pushing eddy, a backward pushing eddy, they're going to find it. So even that little washout, holding all those fish. It's really interesting. So
the river's the same, though, is what I'm getting at. The river's still the same. There's more people on it. That would be a different thing.
Definitely
there's a lot more people on it. And it's clear. The water's cleaning up. More and more, sure, we'll go out there and there'll be a muddy day. We've got north winds right now, rain. Depends on what the little rivers dump into us. But overall, I would say year for year, that's the one major difference, is the water's cleaner today than it was in my lifetime.
I remember my dad telling me when he used to first mate down on St. Clair and Erie, they never even used to use planer boards. It was so tinted, everything was straight below the boat.
Right, that's true.
They just run different size bottom bouncers below the boat to space everything out.
Right,
that's true. I was Dan Shimlack's first mate when I was a kid, and we fished Lake Erie, and he had a 27-foot sport craft down on Lake Erie, and we pulled wiggle warts for walleye. Non-stop wiggle warts, but just straight behind the boat. Rods over to the side, but basically everything just straight down under the boat. Nothing. No planer boards, nothing.
That's great. Those wiggle warts are very valuable today.
Yeah,
Those old school ones. Those old school ones are very valuable today.
Yeah.
And zebra mussels? Or you think I mean, we've got a lot of ship traffic. There's a lot of boats pushing through. There's a lot of water that gets pushed through.
I don't really believe that the zebra mussels themselves are the clarity factor. I just it's a combination of things. A ton of combination of things, and naturally, the further you go down the chain, the dirtier the water's going to get.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So.
We talk about that all the time. How Lake Huron dumps into us, and that's why our water looks the way it does. And then Lake St. Clair's pretty clean, but it gets dirtied up. And then by the time it gets down to Detroit and then into Lake Erie, it's muddied up. Now, does that affect, as the water's cleaned up, we talk about how colors and presentations and all that stuff matter. Has that affected your paint jobs as the water cleans up?
Definitely. And we were talking about it for the last couple weeks, the guys I fished with have brought it up. And I'm 68 years old, so I don't know, what, if I got 10 years, 15 years, whatever it is. But really, this is the most applicable time for colors and patterns of colors. I mean, like the clearer this water comes, the more important color becomes. A lot of guys would tell you that color doesn't make a difference at all. Come on, fish next to me for some money.
Yeah, I know. Cadence is a big thing. Right?
Big thing.
Huge.
Cadence is a big thing, but colors are huge, especially when you get in those low light situations. Like when you do the whip fishing and the hand lining, you're in low light situations. Those colors can make or break you.
Yes, I 100% agree with that.
So let's get into this fun little topic of whipping.
Whipping. Yeah.
I've got to imagine there's quite a few of you that have no idea what we're talking about. And we've been touching on this for a while now. We've been talking about whipping, and we wanted to do a segment, but we wanted to do it right. And there's been enough of you guys that had wanted to see this gentleman with us. So now we're going to talk a little bit about whipping. Would you be able to explain the basics? Someone comes into the shop and they say, what the hell is whipping?
All right.
How do you explain it to them?
So everybody seems to understand trolling, whether that's trolling baits like bandits in open water, or whether that's hand line trolling, right? Like they see the guys in the river doing. Well, what we're doing is we're trolling, except we're anchored in.
That's it.
The current is pulling the baits for us instead of the boat pulling the bait for us.
That's it.
It's a simple process.
So essentially what you're going to want to do is anchor up, and then we're going to explain the process of the rigs you're going to want to use, the rods you're going to use, the reels, and we're going to get into a little bit about the reels.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
We're going to get into a little bit about the reels. We're going to talk about the reels. We're going to talk about leader lengths and all that stuff. But essentially what you guys are going to do is anchor up your boat so you're into the current. Your boat's going to be facing up, and you're going to allow that current that's moving anywhere from 4 down to mile and a half an hour.
The current some places, some of these currents I'm fishing, they're probably 6, 7.
Yeah.
There's some good strong current in the St. Clair River.
And what that's allowing you to do, guys, is you're going to drop your baits back in that current. You're going to free spool your reel. You're going to let that line go back, and as it hits the bottom, you're going to stop. You're going to use your thumb and manually break that reel. Whip, right? That's where it comes from. You're going to whip those baits forward. Those baits are going to move up into the current, and then all you're going to do is let those baits drop back. And usually that's the money drop.
It's usually usually the fish will pick it up on the way back. You may not sense it immediately, but that is what,
right,
what happens. In the old days, we used Dacron line. Today we have, braided lines.
Yeah.
So you have a lot more sense of what's going on when the fish does pick it up.
Right.
That's why when we get talking about reels and rods and stuff, I'm real particular about how that setup works,
When we talked about it, it made a lot of sense. And for you guys, we talk about it all the time. Depending how much you go is how much you're going to use this application. So you might have some guys that are going out there whipping that just want their basic stuff and to drop their lines back. You whip. I mean, is that your favorite way to fish? Really? I mean, you whip a lot.
I whip a lot. I hand line a lot. I tend to hand line when there's too much of a crowd on the shore for me to whip the area I want to whip. I'll come on the outside of man line and take all the fish away then, whatever way I can. You got to do what you got to do.
That's it.
But no, I love whipping. I really do. I can't. In all my life, I can't imagine a time like we had this conversation earlier today about some of the details about whip fishing. But yet, if we had that same conversation in the dark, sitting in the boat, catching a few fish, it's nighttime, it's peace and quiet. That's another big plus over trolling, in my opinion. The motor's off.
Yeah.
We're just sitting there. It's quiet in the dark. You're under the stars, you're under the moon, under the clouds, whatever. I fished in the rain with a buddy the other night. I had a great time. But you could have them conversations then. There's a lot of peace in that stuff.
And we definitely want to get an episode where we get out on the water and we do a lot of that whipping. Our friend Rob Jones, who I just had, he's from Canada.
Right.
We had him on the podcast. He's been telling me, he's like, I want to see what this whipping's all about. And I told him, hey, come on out. We'll do a video. But I'd love to get out in the boat with someone that's done it so long, because it really is one of the most effective ways to put fish in the boat. Yeah. On a good night whipping, it is hard to put as many fish in the boat as you can whipping.
You better
Why
not
is it
put
so
as
effective?
many in the friggin' live well as you're going to catch. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You'll go to jail.
Yeah.
It's effective because, number one, trolling. You might get on a certain bite trolling, and you let's say you made a couple 1 mile passes, by the Grosse Pointe Yacht Club. Yep. You're not. No, I don't care how good you are with your GPS. I don't care how good you are with your graphs. You're not going to hit that exact same structure the exact same way every single time.
No, sir.
Well, we're anchoring in, so we are on the exact same structure and the exact same spot every single time.
Yep.
The only factors then become the wind direction, and the light penetration. That's basically it. Water clarity, light penetration. So it's a more consistent way to fish. And then naturally, like any kind of fishing, I got like certain rules when you're going to go,
right.
you said it maybe in jest, take your pad and your paper, but I've kept journals since I was 16 years old. So those journals become a book that I can refer back to. I can look at the barometer. On my phone, I have a barometer app.
Yep.
So I check the barometer every day. I set it so I know the movement up or down. It's important to me to know that.
Yep.
Wind direction, all these different weather apps, fishing apps that we have to put on the phone. We get a lot of information to go ahead of time with it. I didn't grow up with that.
No.
I didn't grow up with that information. You went out there and okay.
Yeah.
It's raining, I'm getting wet, so the barometer is falling, you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
so that's how we learned. But keeping that information, there's nothing. The best advice any one of the three of us, I'm sure, would give you about learning the way to fish is go fishing.
Time on the water.
Yep,
Time on the water is unmatched, man.
Now, the other thing I have going for me, which you and I talked about, Peter, is that I'm the guy who paints all of them.
Right.
So when I have a customer, Louis comes in and says, I need 17 log perch painted up in these sizes. What better I paint? Where are you fishing, Louis? For what? What do you want the log perch
Yeah.
for? So now I paint up 17 log perch for Louis and a dozen for myself. You know what I mean? Or I know most of the guys. That's one of the things that comes with age. So if you run up and down the river and you find out what guys are using, you got to go into blind.
Yeah.
I don't go into blind.
I had a customer in yesterday that was picking up some of your stuff, and he doesn't have a Facebook. And I was like, dude, you got to get a Facebook, like just to follow like the paint jobs that are coming out and John's stuff and whatnot. And I told him though, it's really cool. Your customers for the most part, a lot of those guys are really cool and they share a lot of information. You guys got, guys like Kevin, where and none of you guys probably know what Kevin is. If Kevin's watching this,
Laker.
yeah, Kevin, you might not even know we're talking about you, but it's guys like Kevin that'll post up, hey, we caught the fish on this color and this is how I did. There's a really cool community that I noticed on your page that those guys will all stay together, that they use your baits, they're loyal to you, but the colors are going to change, and it's cool to watch the anglers share that information.
It's real important to me because I would not be able to paint without them. A lot of the, once you go through a few basics, and I'll show you guys that in a minute when we'll talk about the lure that Kevin specifically helped me to come up with, that with those customers coming back to you and saying, hey, John, can you tweak it this way? Can you tweak it that way? Can you add this? Or look what I did with the fingernail polish.
Yeah.
Can you clean it up for me? Can you do this or that?
Right.
And that's what's developed all the patterns that we paint today.
Exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Like I'll go out
Guys
there
like
with
your dad, dude. Your
Yeah.
dad's got how many Lathams
Yeah,
does your dad?
if you don't think color is important, look, watch this. Now, this ain't rehearsed either. Louis, can you use your dad's truck?
Yeah.
Can you use your dad's boat?
Yeah.
Can you use his baits?
Not the customs.
Customs? Why not?
Like legitimately, how many boxes you sent me a Snapchat? How many special mate boxes of those Latham customs does he have?
I think there's 2 full special mates and then a garbage bag of the ones still in the boxes and rubber bands so the glue stays together.
Sean's also he's a neat freak, so you gotta love that.
Yeah, I do.
You gotta love that.
It's nice for me, all the different guys that like do have that many baits.
And the custom walleye spoons that he's got.
It's cool, man. It's for you, it's got to be humbling. Like, I know how excited I get when I walk around and I see someone wearing this blue hat. I mean, this thing is disgusting. But when I see people wearing this blue hat, or when I see people wearing, the hoodie or whatever.
You can't catch walleye without this hoodie.
No, you got.
If you don't have that hoodie, guys don't have one of these, stay home.
And you guys missed the pre-order, unfortunately. So maybe for Christmas we'll get some more in stock. But no, seriously, I mean, and you go on Facebook and like you go on the the St. Clair River fishing page is a good one because it's so. Have you ever whipped anywhere else besides the river?
Detroit River and St. Clair River. That's it.
Was it?
I've tried St. Mary's River once, but really didn't have my own equipment to do it with. I will be back in the St. Mary's River this coming year, up by Sault Ste. Marie. The current's there. They do have enough current there naturally to whip.
They do.
When that water comes out of them locks, boy.
And they got some big fish, boy.
Oh, boy. Way bigger than what we think is available to us in this river system. Huge walleye.
Yeah. So real quick, Louis, why don't you break down what I'll do this, the standard whipping setup is when people come in. Rod, reel, leads, baits.
What do I think it is?
Yeah.
Like
what do we sell people?
What is it? A 2000 size Magda
Yep.
with a like 32-inch rod.
Anywhere, yeah, it's anywhere from
Full
like,
Q.
yeah, 32 to 48 inches. I'd say
Yeah.
anywhere from like 3 to 4 foot, really.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And then leads, it's 20-pound
Like 20-pound moss green braid. And
for
then
your main line,
Yep. And then they usually buy like
20-pound fluoro.
20-pound fluoro for your like leads off the shank.
Yep. And then they do 6 to 8 foot leads,
Yep.
and they run pencil plugs and repellers. I would say that's the basic, right? 4 foot rod, a Magda, which is a 2000 size line counter. A lot of guys are going to the convectors, which is a flipping switch style line counter. It's important that I'm mentioning line counters here in a second. And then 6 to 8 foot leads. Usually it's pencil plug, repeller. I run 2 leads a lot of times when the fishing's really good, but you run 3 leads. John, what's the whipping setup?
Oh boy, the whipping setup. Okay, well, first off, you gotta here we go. This is 46 inches overall.
Yep.
And you'll note no line counter whatsoever.
Nope. You guys
I
see
love Abu Garcia reels. They're super strong. This rod has been with me since 1982. And the most important thing, I'm going to try and set it right here so you know, we won't see it.
I'll hold it.
If you hold it just right there, yeah. All right, so what's important to me, the freer this line leaves this reel, the easier it travels with the current and the more sensation I have of the tap, the minute, the second, the minute second that sinker makes contact with the bottom.
Yep.
Right? That's because now I know the relationship of my baits to that weight and how I'm going to drop it in.
Yes.
Okay.
So you want that line flowing
So
nice and easy out of there.
If you know, if we pull my lead out of the way, the line isn't hitting the eye at all, first eye at all.
No, it's not.
It's sitting there free. So it comes into the second eye. Is it hitting it yet? Nope. So then the next one, the third one up. Oh no, it's still not it. It doesn't hit anything till we get to the end.
Yep.
Period. The only time that line is going to touch any of those guides is when I have a fish on.
Yep.
Period. Okay, that's important to me. It's got to have a cut through blank. Now, I'm not trying to sell anybody any rods.
No.
You can go out there whipping with a Zebco rod and reel package if that's what you have available to you. I'm not going to try and stop you from whipping. I'm going to try and get you to go no matter what rod and reel you have.
No doubt. And it's hard. Guys, it's hard to find a rod and reel, just to be honest with you. There's
Right.
probably 2 or 3 that are made in production that you'll see a lot of the times. And then a lot of them are going to be customs or cut downs or however you do it. So just understand that as John's going forward.
And there is some good custom rod tires. And Pete sells some nice custom rods here.
Oh, yeah.
This happens to be a Gary Loomis rod, which I bought from Gary Loomis himself and then broke it. And then he sent it. I sent it back to him and explained to him what I wanted to whip with, and he tied it for me, made it into a whipping rod, sent me back another rod for jigging with. So it's super sensitive. I like a stiffer rod than most guys like.
Yep.
I'm not looking to fight the fish per se. Once they're on, this is a meat getter's game.
Yeah.
I just reel it in. If it comes off, it comes off. So what?
Yep.
It isn't like we're not going to catch another one right now. Like it's coming. So sensitivity plays a big part of the key. You can see I have a little heavier braid on here.
What size is that? I noticed
That's
that.
30-pound test braid. Okay. I use 30-pound test. The reason I would today probably, if I was to respool this, put 40. It's still thin enough diameter. What's 48-pound test diameter?
Yeah.
All right. So when we do tag each other, especially in the spring bite with the more silverfish in the system than ever before, when you're tangled up with each other and it's braid, it's a nightmare. Cut it off. Cut it off. Throw it away. I don't have no patience to do that.
No.
When we'll get into my box in a second, I don't sit there and tie leads out in the boat.
No.
If you don't go with rolls of leads, forget it. I even make up my little sinker drops because I like my sinker drops to be 10-pound test, regular 10-pound test, mono, and I like it to be old line so I can snap it off and break it. The sinker snags a lot more than the lures.
Yep.
So you can snag up, snap the sinker off, and I haven't lost the lures. The lures cost you a little bit more money.
You'd agree with me that this ball lead is cheaper than 3 custom repels.
Oh,
correct?
yes, sir. Yep. So that's important to me. A good 3-way.
So you run a 3. So Louis mentioned a shank, and
I don't use shanks.
he briefly touched on it.
Well, what happened with me, and I was again fortunate. I was part of that whole Cabela's in fisherman walleye circuit when it first started.
Mhm.
I fished as an amateur, and I was lucky enough to fish one time with Gary Roach. And Gary Roach taught me what he taught me was to pay attention to small details. The small details could put you into that group of fishermen. You know, the 10% that catch most of the fish.
Yep.
By paying attention to the details. You know, if you learn to tie a knot, you like that knot, tie it 1,000 times and tie it the exact same way every single time. That way you'll pick up your own flaws and mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, and that's hard to look at yourself and say, well, man, I'm doing this wrong, or I'm doing that wrong, you know.
Mhm.
It's hard to humble yourself enough to come in and say, hey, Louis, yeah, I'm 68 and I've been fishing all these years, but like Pete and I had talked about this, braid wasn't commonly available for me to jig with in the Detroit River when I was young.
No.
So we used mono, you know, and so mono made sense with a ultra fast graphite rod. And then as you broke tips off, setting the hook too fast, you know, with the braid, mono even made more sense.
Yeah,
So
because that line didn't
right,
stretch.
this is a whole package you have to look at. It's not just a rod or just a reel. Matching it all up, the right line, the right rod, the right reel. And then let's set this down.
Yeah, go ahead.
Will it stay there for a second?
Yep.
All right. So
It better.
here's leads. Louis got his leads on a reel somewhere, and he's trying to get them out of the boat. My first lure's on already. It's on in the water. Because we take our leads off of our reel hold, our lead holder, right?
Yeah.
All right. So now, and this is important to me. Like guys will say, "What do you use?" They'll say it's common amongst the old timers. It's 12 and a 5. So you got 17 foot. And my first question becomes, why not 3/6? Why not put that third lure into that body of water where that 12-foot lead is, that nothing's running? It's just clear water. The fish are swimming by it, you know?
Right.
The other thing that goes on, and I think this is real important, if you learn one thing off of this podcast, Peter, this is just a plain bass snap. A plain bass snap. There's no, if you're not going to tie the line on direct, so it's a plain bass. Boom, we're out. Go to the front of the lure.
Isn't that weird? You can't at night though. There's fish on. There's fish on. You'll whip that thing.
All right, so now there's nothing on there. There's nothing to weigh that down.
Right.
Right? That's important. So 8 foot out, I think this case, 7-footer. And we'll talk about why in a minute. So now there is a ball bearing, right?
Yeah.
So that's into the tail of my neck lure. And unlike most guys that fish different, I've fished 2 different scenarios.
Mhm.
A wood pencil plug and 2 Rapalas this time of year because I want it to be buoyant. Or in the spring of the year, I'll fish a wood Rapala off my 3-way, a wood pencil plug off my 3-way, rather. I'm sorry. And then into a plastic pencil plug. Night stalkers are heavier, they level off.
Yep.
And then preferably a Rapala at the rear to add some action. Pencil plugs have very little to no action.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Another thing that I think is real important is us old timers, like if you talk to Kevin, for instance, that you brought up.
Yep.
We know how to tune Rapalas.
Yeah.
We know how to tune a pencil plug. So we make the action happen. It's guys who tune plugs still catch more fish than guys that don't. Don't assume that the factory cares whether it catches fish or not coming out of the box.
How many baits have you sold, guys, and they're still there's teeth marks, the bait's chewed to shit, and that bait's still out fishing a brand new one because of the wobble.
Here's Dylan's.
Oh, let me see that. Louis, go show the camera this, please.
This is Dylan's.
Holy smokes.
If I can't I'm not even allowed to fish with that bait. You know, it's Dylan's Blue Vampire. So I would bet you that that
Yeah,
bait.
now just turn it a little bit.
Yeah.
Turn it to the top. That thing is chowed.
I'll
Thank
bet
you.
you that bait's caught in excess of 300 fish. One bait. I have a bait at home that Kevin, Houghton Laker, caught almost that many fish in one night with.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes. So now the second bait's on, and you can see that at the tail we've got a ball bearing, and at the head this. So what this is going to do is again, it's going to add, believe it or not, even though it's a micro amount of weight, it adds a little tiny bit of weight and levels that bait off a little more, right? So if you also understanding bait fish and the way they react in open water, not against the seawall because we're off of the seawall.
Correct.
So if you're out in the open water and you understand the way a bait fish reacts, he wants to go to the bottom. He doesn't have any place to be safe until he gets to the bottom.
Right.
Right. So then we put a wood pencil plug in here. I've already got all three in the water. I'm fishing. Louis just now getting his first one in the water, and I'm
just getting his leads off the.
I'm pulling in the fish. Right? It's done. So the other thing about three leads and using three that are all the same is that, if we're both fishing 3 8-foot leads, let's say, to start, and all the fish come on the top, what's the first question?
We got to raise our baits.
Why are the other two in water that's not catching fish, right? So we either lengthen our leads, or we lengthen our drop, or we lengthen the drop and the leads. It's hard to do that for the average Joe. I'm the painter. If I lose 3 $15 Rapalas, it hurts me too, but not as bad as some other guys.
Right.
So
No.
that's the trick. Starting out with the same consistent process every single time. Just let the fish dictate to you where you're supposed to put those. Is it a color?
Right.
Sometimes it's a color. I'll give you a good example. I'm not pretending I know everything at all. I don't. I have a pencil plug in this side.
No, but I'm willing. You have your fair share of. We talk about time on the water. So so guys, while he's grabbing that plug real quick, so all he's saying is if you want those baits to ride hider in the water column, these Rapalas here. These are balsa baits. These are all floaters here. The wood pencil plugs, the night stalkers, they're also floating baits. So the longer that you can get those boats away from the three-way, and the longer that you can get those away from the rod, the higher they're going to come up. The closer you bring them to the rod and the closer you bring them to the weight, the lower they're going to run. Here we go.
So I was fishing this pink bait one night with my son.
Yep.
I just painted it. I painted it because we're painting pink vampire, and I was thinking it's just pink and black. That's all. Pink and black. Let's make it simplify it, paint it. In this one particular case, we were fishing near Roberts Landing, and we had been on a bite there for 3-4 days. We got out, and I put this lure on. This was my closest to my three-way, and immediately caught 6 fish. Well, my son said, "Dad, you're going to take that lure off and give it to me." So I took it off. Because he's in a hurry, we put it out on the end. So now it's up at the top of the column, right? Not the bottom of the column, top. Fish followed, which surprised me. It really shocked me that the fish follows the color.
Really?
It's the only one we had in the boat. I moved it to the middle of my rod. And after Dylan caught 6 fish, and caught 6 fish, the next 6 on this same plug, and it came to the middle. We moved that plug back and forth for an hour and a half just to watch the fish go up and down at it. Now, one other time, and I've seen this, there's actually a film in our area of a bait that I painted that the guys thought, what's going on with it? Why are they following it? They threw it in a live one. Fish hit it in a live one.
That's crazy.
That's how bad they can want color sometimes.
That's how much color means to them.
Yeah. Sometimes it does make big difference.
Man.
Now with those floating baits and catching 300 fish on them, does it matter what size replacement hooks you put on them?
I like it does. I use the same BMCs that probably on.
Size 4s, I believe.
No, they're 5s actually.
Are they 5s?
And they're hard to buy.
Yeah.
Aftermarket. You have to, years ago you could buy them a lot more easy. Today, on all my own baits, and I've just started doing this in the last year. I started using Kevin Van Dam size 6s on the tail of every bait. That
Really?
triple grip.
Yeah.
Triple grip Kevin Van Dam hook on the tail of every bait. No, you don't lose any. The triple grip hook somehow just holds on no matter what.
Really?
So that makes a big difference too. We talked about reels because I'm not a fan of line count.
No, we had a really, really cool conversation. John stopped in this morning and was like, "Hey, I just want to clear something up real quick. You're out and about, whatever."
Yeah.
He goes, I'm not gonna sell line counter reels for you."
No, I'm not.
I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "I don't like them at all." And I mean, you've been telling me this. I notice all the combos that you get rid of, they never have the line counter. I'm like, dude, we sell the line counters, and he goes, "Well, you better get reels without line counters."
So the reason I don't like line counters is and Pete understand. The more time you spend with a graph and understanding structure, the structure of where you're actually fishing, right? So we're trapped in our own thinking that the structure is what's being seen on that graph. And sometimes structure is a mud line. Ask a handliner not to fish the mud line.
Not gonna happen.
And tell me that mud in the water isn't a structure.
Right.
Tell me a thermocline isn't a structure. It is. So why are those fish fighting where we're anchoring? Another argument with people when we've talked about water depths, up and down, up and down, up and down. So if you anchored in 21 foot of water last year and the water dropped 2 feet, where should you anchor? Are you going to move out to 21 foot? I'm not, because the fish doesn't care how much water's over its head, except in strong moonlight and clear water. He wants more safety. He'll go deeper then. But if he's following a structure, that's a path of travel to the bait fish ahead. They're going to follow it no matter how much water's overhead.
Right.
All right. So now I've got to be alert. Water's down 2 foot. I was fishing in 20. That GPS puts me X mark at the top every single time. Now the next factor becomes we send our baits out. Louis fishing with a line counter. I'm not. And we send those baits out. And then you pick up a fish at 50 foot. It's typical reaction for me when you get that fish on, because I don't want us to get messed up, to swing the boat out, right? I grab my tiller and swing the boat outward into the current, right? That gives you a clear space if you're fishing on the inside to bring your fish in. It's easier. Now you go back down at 50 foot, you can't figure out why you can't catch your fish. You're sitting there watching that line counter. Well, maybe I'll go to 40, maybe I'll go to 60. But in the meantime, that distance that we moved, that 1 foot at our end with 100 yards of line out translates to 8 foot at the end, where you're so far off the mark it ain't even funny, and you're counting on that line counter to bring you into it. It isn't going to happen.
It's like they almost, like a lot of guys, what you're saying is like a lot of guys will basically use it as a cheat code, right? Oh, I caught one fish at 50. I'm going to catch them all at 50.
And it doesn't happen.
Because if you're swinging, your outside your boat's going to go here. So now instead of your line being where it needs to be, it's going to be a hair short.
Right. Hair short of where you should be. If you went another 20 feet, you may tag that spot, the unseen spot, that piece of structure that is a thermocline or is a silt in the water or is a weed bed that the fish are congregating at, that you need to get to.
Right.
And if you're relying on something to tell you, here's the other thing I always wondered. Who set that line counter and who calibrated it today when you went out?
Is it calibrated? I mean, isn't that the big thing with all the trollers?
It is.
Right? Is it calibrated?
Yep.
You got a point. I can promise you that there aren't guys taking their whipping setups and walking it out 100 feet, marking it off, and doing that. Calibrating them?
What I do, again, it's that freedom of travel, right? So after I've used this a couple nights, I'll go in, and the way that this came up was somebody arguing with me about how close we anchor on top. You only fish out 100 feet or 150 feet. I said, well, I can fish out 300 yards
right
from the boat, no problem. And what I did is I hooked a sinker up to my rear fence back at the canal and came across Point Drive to where you could see the line was wet.
Yeah.
My lot's 280 feet deep, so we know we were at least 300 feet right back. And then when I did that, I noticed that what I did is sink the reel and the pawl together. so that the line was going in real straight every single time when I reeled it in, and it was going back out real straight. I didn't have the line guy bringing my line over at an angle.
Right.
It was straight and free.
And have a lopsided spool too.
Right. So that's all real important. And so in that sense, yeah, I do a little calibration every couple times I go out.
Yeah.
So the other thing I do,
Damn.
I don't do that. I'm not that.
I wouldn't say
dialed in.
I wouldn't say Louis big into the whipping game.
No,
Not yet.
I've been twice.
Twice, really?
Twice, my whole life.
Twice.
Whatever
don't
you
like
guys
finding
do,
spots.
hey,
Yeah,
whatever you guys do not listen to Louis' advice.
No.
No, you don't eat onions, so we don't want to listen to Louis'
John?
advice anyway.
Oh my.
If you guys tuned into the cooking fish episode, we talked about pickled walleye, and John makes a really good pickled walleye, and Louis kind of fired some shots, so I guess he had the bass fishing shots coming.
Yeah. I actually learned the pickled walleye from the customer you were talking about that was in the shop. That's who taught
Oh,
me
no
that
way.
pickled white. Yeah, that John, a customer of mine,
Yeah.
that taught me that, and I owe him, in fact, because I commented on you guys' podcast about walleye lasagna. That
Yes.
I make walleye lasagna.
Yes.
So now I got to make that for John.
Yeah.
So see, I do this a lot too, Louis. Dropped
Just-
it right in my box, and now we're making a mess.
No, you make a mess out fishing? That happens? Tangles?
Once in a while. When you carry 500-600 lures with you, yeah, that happens.
I know that's a beautiful thing. I'm gonna definitely take a picture of this box and post it. I'll black and white the colors. You need me to?
No, they can see anything they want in there.
And you can come buy them right here at Hook One.
And there's some lures like that's the thing about my paint that I am kind of proud of.
Yeah.
This lure's been with me a year and no one has seen it. And you can see it's working. I actually paint this stuff up when I have ideas. I paint it up and take it out there and test it.
Yep.
And work with it first before I just start, let's just paint it because they're buying everything I paint anyway.
That's got to be a ton of fun though, because it's got to get monotonous being in that garage all the time painting. And obviously you're painting different baits and different colors and whatnot, but that's got to be monotonous. So get to paint something that you want to paint, and then to go test it, and then to see it work. That's got to be a rush.
I bet you'd be hard pressed to find anything I didn't paint in them.
Yeah, I mean I believe that.
So.
I
But
believe
anyway,
that.
the whipping thing is next is going to become. So you got a rod and a reel and some line on it, and you got 3 leads, and they're all the same. We hope we got to that much. You're going to use a piece of break off for your drop, right?
Yep.
And we're going to go to Russell Island in the spring, and we're going to get on the sandbar in the middle of the world of mess of boats, and we're going to catch. And that's the best place anyone can go to.
That's what you were saying.
Look for the red Lund, anchor on top of him. He's been there forever, and just anchor right on top of him and go. You know what I mean? And that's how I learned.
The guy in the red Lund's gonna be so pissed. But
actually, a friend of mine named Bruce Fowles from Detroit brought me up when I was 16, and we were fishing out of Lixie's up. You know where Lixie's at?
Yep.
Boat livery up on the river by Marysville, and we went over behind Stag Island, and we were anchored 5 boats abreast. I was the furthest inside, meaning I was closest to shore, and I was fishing with a guy named Bob Fowles, Bruce's dad. Bruce was in the next boat, and Bob kind of coached me through, let me have two leads, 2 8-foot leads. And my baits were running right up alongside a dock that was probably 150 foot back. And what was nice about this particular dock was the guy 24/7 had lights on. So it held bait. The dock held bait, right? And by the time I got my 6th fish in the boat, Bob had 48. So, but I mean, it was the first time I was ever whipped, so 6 fish was just phenomenal.
yeah,
His uncle left. Got pissed at all of us guys on the inside that were catching fish, and he left. He was the old man. We get back into Lixie's, it's 2 a.m., and Bob says, get back in the boat. I said, why? He says, we're going to go find my Uncle Mike. Why are we going to find your Uncle Mike? He says, he won't come in unless I go get him. So we went out, and we started going down the Canadian shore, and, we're up on plane, and then pretty soon he takes the boat off the plane and, kind of coasts down real quiet, and there's his uncle up ahead of me. 200 feet in the dark, right? As I got closer to the boat, I realized the boat was laying low in the water. fish were jumping out of the boat into the St. Clair River.
Dude.
Oh, yes, and his uncle was bringing in double headers, one after another, and throwing him over his shoulder, and didn't even care where they. Get away from me! Get away from me! Stay away from me! And just yelling at him.
Yeah.
So naturally, after that being my very first night, I was at their house the next day, right when I got out of school. Let's go! I'm ready to go.
Dude.
Right? So it took a long time. It took a long time to do it.
Yeah.
And it takes time.
And that's the thing, like Louie and I, when we talk about it, we talk about spending time on the water. We can get guys. I mean, we've talked to a lot of guys that are in this business and in this industry, but it's hard. It's hard to beat what a local does. And when you've been around for as long as you have and you fish these waters, I mean, when it comes to Stag Island, when it comes to the spots that you whip, I'm willing to bet you know every nook and cranny, every little drop off, every little point, and there's still more to learn.
I fish it from Port Huron out in front of the bridge all the way down into the channels.
Yeah.
I went whipping twice in the Detroit River. That's a tough game. It
Yeah.
can be done. It can be done at the south end of Belle Isle and up against the whiskey plant are two good spots. In between Peach Island and the Canadian Shore is a good spot.
Yeah.
But you're going to use 1 ounce of weight, no 2.5, 3 ounces. You're going to use real lightweight.
Right.
Again, part of your arsenal can become getting away from the Rapalas, getting into bomber long A's or thunder sticks, full size AJ thunder sticks. Good bait.
Thunder sticks are a good bait.
Yeah.
Well, the reason being is the bait has a bigger lip, and the bait pulls harder in less current, so it'll travel for you when the little Rapala lip won't grab the current and go.
Yeah, it won't give you as much
Again,
action.
growing up with some of the old timers, I was able to learn some of the stuff. There was a guy that's kind of famous named Steve Zola, painted pencil plug, and he changed the lips, the heads of the pencil plugs. And I hunt for his cup head pencil plugs. They have a cup head on them instead of a cut head, and it grabs more water. It's a simple thing. It just grabs more water, so it'll pull in those areas. And again, part of your arsenal. I'm telling you about using it in Detroit, but if you're in the St. Clair River and it's Friday, Saturday night, and you're going out and anchoring, you may not get to anchor where you have some experience. You may be looking for that new hole that you'll be able to fish. You anchor in and the current's just a little bit light and you don't feel like it's traveling good. Play with some baits. Get that thing to pull back. The bait will make the difference then.
I can't believe, and Louis can attest to this, I can't believe how popular and how much traction whipping is gaining as we move forward. And we talk about how effective it is to catch fish. So, like, obviously it makes sense. But it really is nuts. It really is nuts to see all those boats on the water, how early they get out there on the water. I mean, it's crazy, right?
The amount of whippers that have came in, new whippers, I should say, just starting is unbelievable. Even this past year.
Right.
And I do think, I do think that we've never really talked about this on camera. Is actually a pretty good time to do it, to kind of give you your flowers. But you and your crew have got a lot of people into it. Spread the word. You've spread the knowledge, because if it wasn't for guys like you, and guys sharing that information, these guys would they would have no idea.
It's I think unfortunately times have changed since the whole country changed.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, back when I first came to this area, I come from St. Clair Shores originally, and as Pete knows, I moved to this area when I bought a tire store here. My dad helped me to get in the tire business here in Marine City, and when I came up here, there was a whole group of people that were hand lining. Louis' dad knows a lot of them. Some of them are gone. Bob Hayden was a phenomenal fisherman out of St. Clair.
Yep.
Jack Kincaid was here out of Marine City.
Yep.
Maury Schroeder was here out of Marine City. We all had radios on our boats. We all had nicknames. We all had a code language developed, right? So that I could tell you what lure I was using without saying what lure I was using. I could tell you where I was at without saying where I was at. I could get you into the right depth of water. I could tell you what lead we were using, the fish were coming on. So we had a lot better sense of communication. I think now what's happened is, because, like Louis said, so many new people, we're all becoming a little afraid. Like, what are you filming? Don't show that background. I don't want anyone to see where we're at. And, myself, my boat, and Louis, I think, and you both know, my boat's set up a little abnormal for a little 16-foot aluminum river boat. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I've got a jack plate on it, and I've got a little extra horsepower, and it moves. So you're not going to follow me out there. I don't want you to see me. You're not going to see me. It's just where we've gone.
Yep.
But it is getting more crowded, a lot more crowded. And what I really believe about whipping is that if we all just had that same sense that us old timers had, if we all worked together, I know 50 places up and down this river, we can put 4 boats abreast and all of us catch fish instead of everybody having to fight over, oh, I didn't get there, or oh, I didn't get here. If you work together and share that information the right way, we've got room for a lot more.
Yeah.
At least for your guys' lifetime.
I love that. I love
I
that.
do too.
We talk about that. Well, you just told me a story, the other day about you pulled into a spot, assessed the situation, set yourself up so you weren't in anybody's way and you weren't going to tangle anybody's lines. And
Smoke.
a guy pulls up to you and says, "Hey, you're cutting off all our fish." Well, you were the one that was in a hurry to get out here first.
Right.
You got set up first. You picked your spot. I got out here late. I set up my spot, but I knew what I knew. And I think that's a big thing. Like right here, right in front of the shop is a really good place to whip.
Right.
And we have, some days there's 6 boats there and they don't always do it right where they're all abreast and they're there, right? They kind of share themselves. You're catching the anchor. You're catching someone else's line. And I mean, Allie and I, my wife, we have fun opening the door and listening to these guys yell at each other. I mean, that's fun for me. I think it's hilarious. Hey, you're in my spot. Oh, you stole my spot. Give me my plugs back. All that kind of, and it's like, guys, if you would just work together, that whole rock pile holds fish.
Right, it does.
Right,
Yep.
above it and below it.
That's right.
And so I think you nailed it, man. I think working together and understanding the concepts instead of just trying to be the first guy to the spot or the whatever. You know what I mean?
Right. And it's
a learning game.
It is. It's a learning game. I've had the same.
You're still learning.
Oh man, there's so much to learn about this. There's so many spots to fish, and the river does. That's like I said. On any given night, the wind can be the change. The moonlight penetration can be the change. I was telling Pete earlier today that we were out. I've been out not last night, but before that, 5 nights in a row. I don't think the least fish I caught in any one of those 5 nights was 50 fish. I don't think I was out 2 hours any night.
No.
So it was just phenomenal. It's been phenomenal. It's on. It's only going to get better and better until the ice comes.
Yep.
All I'm going to say is be safe. As it gets colder, realize that if you fall in that water, it can kill you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I want to touch on something real quick because we are running low on time here. Cadence.
Cadence is real important.
When it comes to cadence and whipping, because we talked about color and how important that can be, but with cadence and when the water gets colder, you're going to do shorter whips. Right? Can you touch on that a little bit?
Slow down. Okay, so cadence, and there are guys. You'll see guys whipping like this out there. You'll see guys that whip like this sideways.
Yep.
Okay. You'll see guys that myself when this sinker, I let open this bail, and when that sinker comes down and hits the bottom, taps the bottom, I initially gauge the current itself. If that current is strong, I'm in a spot where I traditionally know it's strong current. I'm not pulling that rod. All I'm going to do is take my thumb off and let it make its second bounce, make its third bounce, make its fourth bounce. I'm going to wait for it to start settling in before I start giving a little rod action to it.
Yeah.
Now, a real trick, I believe, to catching walleye whipping. One thing to catch fish when the fish are on, 100% of the fish are on feed, right? In the area we're at. That's easy. Anybody can catch fish, right? So now what are you going to do when they're not all on? When 10% are on, right?
Yes.
All right, so now you got to feed them. So it becomes bounce, it's in. Now, before I lift that tip again, before I pull that weight off that bottom, lay it back.
Yes.
That fish is laying back there. He's watching your bait wiggle. Put it in his mouth.
Yep.
Now, all this other stuff we talked about, sensitivity, when that bait goes in a walleye's mouth and taps the side of his mouth, if you can't feel it, he closes his gills, displaces the water, and the bait's back out of his mouth. You're not going to set the hook. The other thing to do is to pay enough attention to the bite itself as you're fishing to understand that walleye are bad hunters. They're really bad hunters.
They are.
Horrible hunters, all right? So probably 80% of those fish you missed you didn't miss. The fish just hit the line. It hit something else. It swam, under your leads. It swam under your line going upriver. Its gill caught something for a second. I mean, you did not get it. Every one of those isn't a hit. You've got to learn to pay attention to the little details. And
Right.
then as you do, you understand, I just dropped that in the fish's mouth.
Yeah.
Slow down. The water's getting colder. And the colder it gets, the slower the bait fish get, the slower your bait should get. Sit still when you bounce, sit still. Louis fishes a lot with jerk baits.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, for bass. What do they tell you about a jerk bait?
But it's
Sit until you can't stand it and then
Yeah.
count to 20. When you are just at your very absolute end, I've got to move this thing. I'm not getting no fish.
Yeah.
Count to 20 and then bam, there he is, and you got the fish, right?
Yep.
Because you had the patience to get the fish. You paid attention to that detail.
Yep.
And then the next cast out and retrieve, you can do identical, if
Yeah.
you're paying attention. So
Yeah, that's really cool advice, because I've always noticed that, even being young, and I do not whip nearly as much as I should, but I always notice when you're paying attention to that bite as you're letting the bait back, even when you're jigging, right? As the bait's
Right.
falling is when those fish pick it up.
Right.
So many guys think it's biting as you're pulling it forward, and it's like, guys, you are actually feeding the fish is the best way to. You're literally feeding the fish. You're dropping the bait. The fish is sitting in the current, and you're dropping it right back to him.
Right. He'll open his mouth.
Yeah.
You can do it. You guys can actually see this for yourself jigging the Blue Water Bridge in the earliest part of the summer, late part of the spring, when the water's still a little bit cool and
Yeah.
super clear. You can go up there and fish in 40 foot of water, can't you, Louis?
Oh,
See
yeah.
the bottom.
Oh,
See
yeah.
the schools of walleye. Watch how they feed. They'll move right away out of the way of the jig. If they don't want it, they're not going to take it.
Oh yeah. I've
so-
done it before.
Yeah.
It's sight fishing walleyes.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's fun.
It's remarkable.
It's a lot of fun.
because those fish. See, and that's one thing. Like the clean water, it makes those fish so smart, and they can kind of be finicky and dial it in. But
Right.
the cadence, the color. If you do anything wrong, they're going to notice it.
Yep.
So it's tuning that in, because guys, we're not here, Louis, me, John, we're not here to give you the information and the tips to catch these fish in the middle of May when they'll bite anything, because it's not going to make you guys better fishermen. But that is when you can go out and really start to focus on your setups, on letting those baits back, your comfortability of fishing. That's when you can dial it in, because I think you've heard it in the last hour. There's a lot of very minute details, and John, we didn't even touch on.
None.
I'm gonna have you
Weights. We'll have to do, just
yeah.
talking about adding an extra half ounce of weight. And Pete and I were looking at round balls that he's got here, and the best sinker to
I
use
got
for
to buy new
weight.
molds.
Yeah. That extra half ounce sometimes will slow those lures down just enough, that you're going to pick up 2 or 3 more fish.
Yep.
And
And
that's
those
what
not
I
you.
want to do. I mean,
Yeah.
I like catching way better than fishing.
They're using, yeah, for sure. And it's like using a snap instead of a snap and a barrel swivel, so the bait doesn't move how you don't
Right.
want it. It's a lot of very little things. It's a lot of time on the water. Damn, man, I cannot thank you enough for coming out
I
here.
love
I
you
can't believe
guys,
we hit
man.
an hour.
Yeah, good.
I told you it was gonna fly.
Yeah, it does. Time flies.
And we just,
we didn't get to dig Louis enough, so we need to do an hour of that too.
No, I know. I've been hard on the guy. I got to give him a few weeks.
God, it's so much fun to watch you guys from my house. When I'll be painting, and I'll put you guys on and watch this, and I'm cracking up watching Peter dig you,
Dude.
and you just let it fly right
Hey.
over your head.
I want you guys to know Louis digs me. He hurts my
I
feelings bad, but not on camera.
Yeah, but you're soft. Louis hard.
On that note, John, thank you, brother. We're gonna
thanks
have
for
you
having
back.
me.
We're
Yep.
gonna have you back. We got more whipping to talk about. We got hand lining to talk about. To be honest with you, man, I want to sit down and just put a camera in front of our face and talk about stories for hours. I think there's so much valuable information up there that whether you want to share it or not, but I'm not even talking about like your secrets, but just the stories.
Yeah.
There's just so much, man.
There's a
It's
lot.
a beautiful thing.
Yep. Yep.
It's a beautiful thing, and you've been with us since day one, dude. That really,
I'm going
really
to go
means a
back
lot.
on that. I don't know if you run out of time or not, but I met you at the restaurant.
Yeah.
You were waitering for your dad.
Hey, these podcast guys are sick of hearing about the rest.
Oh, this ain't about the restaurant. This is about Peter. He was
Yeah.
a young punk. I don't even know if he was driving yet. He was playing football,
Oh yeah,
and he told me that he came up to me like I was somebody. Are you Mr. Latham? And I said, yeah. And he says, I collect your baits.
yeah.
And he told me that he was going to be a charter boat captain, and he told me that he was going to have a tackle store, And so to watch Peter grow up and for all that to fall into place and keep it here in Marine City. That's
Yeah.
that's actually touching to me.
It-
It's important. It's cool.
It's cool, man. And obviously, if it wasn't for Louis, you know what I mean. It's been a team game.
Well,
but
yeah, you need somebody who can catch fish
yeah,
in a tackle shop.
You need
About all that.
You need some idiot to sit back here on the microphone. You need someone else out there catching fish. So,
There you go. Yeah.
dibs on the idiot. But no, seriously, this has been a really cool conversation. I'm really gonna lose this. I'm gonna throw this mic across the room.
There you go.
Louis, can you please tell the folks what they need to do for us?
Just like, share, and subscribe.
Guys, we need you to like, share, and subscribe. We've gone a little stale with growing. I've noticed our last few videos have had the same amount of views. Pick it up.
There you
Pick it
go.
up over there. All right. We need to like, share, subscribe. I know a lot of people are going to tune into this one. I know a lot of guys want to hear the whipping advice and the stuff that you got to say, John. So thank you again.
Yep.
Dylan, if you're watching this, brother, thank you for letting John do what he does. Dylan's your son.
Yep.
Dylan gives up a lot of time for you to do what you do. So I want Dylan to know that we greatly appreciate everything that you do, buddy. Thank you. And with that being said, guys, please like, share, and subscribe. Catch us next week. Adios.
Good night.